Hey, welcome to my channel where I make learning programming easy. Today we're going to be covering SQL CRUD. We'll be using commands to create a database, to create a table, and an example of how you would do this using a form on a website. Now, you don't need an IDE to do this. I just feel that for teaching purposes, it's easier for you to see the code if I write it in Visual Studio Code so that the colors for each part of the code is color coded, which makes it easier to see. So, the only thing that you need in here right now is to create a new file, and we're going to call this create, or let's just call it CRUD, crud.php. No, not PHP, crud.sql. Alright, so this is where I'm going to write the code so that you can see what I am doing. We're going to be working with SQL Database, so we're going to be creating an SQL database. So to do that, we need an SQL driver. I'm using MySQL on XAMPP. And if you want to follow along and see how to use this in a web page, then you also need a PHP server. So I'm using Apache right here. So I'm going to open the terminal in XAMPP. If you're using this XAMPP as your server or your local host, if you use XAMPP as your local host, then you're going to have a terminal and you can open that up. So once you open up the XAMPP terminal, you're going to want to start the MySQL driver. So type MySQL -u for user, and the user is root. If you have created a user with the password, then this is where you type it. I just use the default root, which has no password on it. So now we are, as you can see, if you look up at the top, you can see that we are using MySQL driver. So in the terminal or in SQL commands, if you want to see the databases that you have, you'll type show and databases, and you have to put a semicolon at the end. And these are all of my databases, which is a total of 64. I have 64 databases. So in the first part of this lesson, we're going to be typing the commands in the terminal, and then we're going to truncate that, and then I'm going to show you how to do it in a file. So first, we're going to create a database, and I'm going to call this database CRUD SQL. And don't forget your semicolon. Alright, now we're going to use database. We're going to use the database CRUD SQL. Alright, so if you see right here, we're using no database, and now you see we're using the CRUD database, well, the one that I created right here. So now that we're in our database, we can create a table. So let's see, what kind of database do we want to use in this project? We're going to write the rest of this code in a file so that you can see it. But I'm going to actually delete this table and write all this code in a file. You don't have to do this. I'm just doing this just so that you can see other ways to do the same thing. So to delete this database, we are going to use the drop command. So to delete the entire database, or if you were doing a table, you would use the drop keyword, and you type drop database and the name of the database that you're dropping. Alright, so now we're back to using none. If you were dropping a table, you would type drop table and then the name of the table. Alright, so now let us go to Visual Studio Code and use the same commands that we already used, and we're also going to be creating a table. So here I created a file, ended it with .sql extension, and so we're going to be creating our database. So the same command, create database. You do not have to use all caps. That is just standard to make it easier to see the keywords separated from the elements that you define. So I defined this. That's a name that I created, but these are actual keywords that are part of the language. So to separate the commands, the keyword commands, from the elements that are defined by you, I'm going to use caps, and that's just standard but not required. The code will still work even if you did not use all caps. So we're going to create a database, and then we're going to use that database, use database, and then we're going to create a table, and I'm going to put this in parentheses. Okay, so for every field, you need to name the field, and you also need to declare what data type it is. So we're going to create a field named UID, which stands for user ID, and we're going to make this an int for integer. That's the data type with a limit of 5 digits. We're also going to set this to auto increment. Alright, you want to set this to auto increment and make this the primary key. So in Excel, I made this small little table so you can see what we're going to be creating. Just a simple table with a user ID, an email, and a join date. So the user ID is data type int, the email is data type string, and or varchar. In normal programming language, we would make this a string, but in SQL, strings are vars, varchar, or text. And the join date is going to be data type date time. So let's go back here. So this is the first, that's the name of this field, the data type, and I want this to be the primary key, and I want it to auto increment. So for the next field, we have email. So the name of this is email. The data type is varchar, and let's say 255 for the number of characters. And the next one is join date. So it's join date, and the data type for this is date time. And the code that we have to make sure that there are no errors. So we create a database, we use the database, then we need to create a table. And there's one thing missing from our code. We need to give our table a name. So the name of the table is, I'm going to call this members. So I'll create a table named members. All right, and now let's copy all of this and paste it here. All right, so there are no errors, and so now we're going to type show tables, and you'll see that we have a new table here. And now we're going to say describe table, describe members, and you'll see we have 3 fields. One is for int, one is for varchar, one is for date time. DESC, that's the short. If you were to type describe members, it will basically do the same thing. So this is the short way, and this is the longer way. So now I'm going to show you another way that you can edit a table or use the create in CRUD to create a new database or table. So let us comment out all this, and then I'm going to copy this and paste it here. And then I'm going to uncomment that. Alright, we're going to create a new table, and I'm going to change the name to say teachers, and I'm going to remove this join date, but I'm going to add a field for first name, and this is going to be varchar, and then I'm just going to copy this and paste it here, and don't forget the comma at the end, and I'm going to make this for the last name. So I got first name, last name, and email. You have an SQL file right here. Now, if you want to add a new table to a database, all you gotta do, or not, you could do this for any kind of SQL script that you want to run. So you want to run an SQL script, you just write the script, and this one we're not creating a database, we're just going to use a database that already existed, and we're going to create a new table. So all you need is the path to the file, and I'm going to get it from here. And once you have the path to the file, you just type source and you paste it. Alright, no errors. So let's see. Let's go show tables. And you see you have the table there. And let's see the table. And you see. So that is another way you can write the code in an SQL file. And then all you gotta do is type source and then the path to the file right here. And it'll execute the SQL command. So that is how you use the create command. Well, that's how you create in CRUD in SQL. And if you were to use this like on a website in code, you would need to use PHP, and then you would need to, first you need to connect to the database, then you need to instantiate TDO, and then you need to run a query to execute. So connect to the database is very simple. You don't have to do it like this, but that's just standard. So you need host, you need a user, and you need a password. So you have the host, the user, and the password. And you need database name that you're connecting to. So this is the database that I'm using, and UTF-8 MB. Alright, so we have host, user, password, database, and charge set. And now we're going to combine all of those. So let's just say DB for database. Let's say DBN equals. DBN equals. We're going to use double quotes so that we don't have to use the period in between. So first, the driver is MySQL, and a colon, and the host equals that right there. Host equals host. And then you want to add what the DB name is. DB name equals database. I'm just going to shorten this to DB, and then char set equals, I'm going to shorten this to, and char set equals char. So we have the host, the database name, and the char set. Now I like to put my options for PO here, and this is going to be an array. I actually have a cheat sheet, so I don't have to type this every time. So I'm going to copy my cheat sheet. This is completely optional, and those are my options for my PO. You can copy that if you want or not. You don't need that, but it's just how I prefer to do it. Alright, now we are going to instantiate the PDO, and so now we just need this right here, copying that from my cheat sheet. This is DBN, which is this right here, user, which is root right here, password, PWD, password, and options. Alright, so we instantiate the PDO, and this is not a practical use of this, but you're going to be writing this often, so we're going to do the impractical. We're going to use it in practical because this is how you're going to be doing it when running other SQL commands. So ordinarily, you're not going to be creating a table using a form, but just for teaching purposes, we are going to use a form to create this, but this is not something that you would ordinarily do in real use. You don't really create tables for forms. Just for this teaching, we're going to do that. So we're going to say if we connect to database, and so if we're going to move this here, and we just can move this here and move this here. So if you connect to database, then you run SQL CRUD. But before we do that, we have another if. So we say if request, we're going to use the global server, if server request method equals post, or this is how we do this, post, then run this code right here. So if server request method equals post, we run this code. So let's move all of this here. And then we're going to do else statement. Alright, oops, you must be lost. Okay, so the query is going to be, first we need a prepare statement. So let's call this statement equals. So let's grab some code from here. Make sure we have the database. Right, we have our database good. Alright, so let's just copy this, and we're going to, alright, we're going to make this volunteers. Alright, so it's the same thing. New table, we're calling it volunteers, and so you have to convert this so that it can be used in a PDO. So we have create table name, that's correct. That's good, everything is good. Alright, so we don't need a prepare statement for this. We just need to execute it. Alright, so let's bring this up. So this is the SQL statement right here. And now we're just going to use our PDO object, which is con, and we're going to execute this statement. And that is pretty much it. The only thing, let's go open this page in the browser. So as you can see, it has a message that says, oops, you must be lost, because you need to get here by way of a form. So to do that, you could create a page with a form, or you could just, I guess I'll do that, create a quick page called form. And to create a form, we need to set the action to create.php, and I'm just going to put a button on here. So we have a button, type equals submit. Alright, that's all we need for this. So let us go to this page called form, and it's a small little button, and click on the button. And the reason why you see this, still see this message is because we did not put a method. So method equals post. So now let's go back to this page, form. If you do not choose a method, it automatically chooses get. The get method is automatically chosen if you don't choose a method. Alright, so now you see no error message, and if you go back here and you type show tables, you'll see now you have a new table, and you'll see that table was created using a form. So the way that we edit SQL databases using PHP forms is you need to choose method post, and action is wherever the script is, and the script is executed once you submit the form. This again is not a practical use of a form or a way to create a database using PHP, but it shows you how you can work with databases, how you can work with SQL databases using PHP. So that is the end of the create part of the CRUD. That is all you need to create an SQL database or an SQL table. That is C for create, R for read, U for update, and D for delete. So in this we covered C for create and the different ways that you can create it. Next up is going to be read, which is easier, update, which is similar to create but different commands, different keywords, and then delete is going to be easy to, just like read and delete are pretty simple, and create and update are more similar. So that is it for this.